One of the stories in college football off the field that affects Michigan State with their head coach in Mel Tucker that popped out a couple of days ago and then really heated up even more so on Monday is the Mel Tucker, Michigan State, Brenda Tracy. And this doesn't look like it's going to end well for Mel Tucker. He's been suspended indefinitely. And we're joined by John Brice of FootballScoop.com. John, how ugly is this going to get?
I mean, it's already just completely heinous and remarkably ugly, especially when you consider the backdrop at Michigan State of the past decade with Dr. Larry Nassar and what vile acts he was convicted of committing. So this is deplorable on every level because this is somebody who is supposed to be the face, not just of the program, but really of the university alongside Tom Izzo, the basketball coach, and this is also supposed to be somebody who is molding young men.
John, is there any way he steers out of this?
It's hard to see a path forward for Mel Tucker, particularly as we've learned today that Michigan State has already removed his images from within the football operations building, particularly when recruits are abandoning ship left and right. And just when you consider that Brenda Tracy has flat out challenged him to publicly testify as she intends to do next month when Michigan State holds this hearing. I also think that Michigan State not scheduling the hearing until October 5th or 6th, whenever it is, because that's Michigan State's open date on its football schedule, is an absolute lack of leadership.
So, John, where are we as far as the timeline right now? Like, it came out that, there were these allegations, right? And then Mel Tucker eventually responded. Has anything else come out since his initial kind of pushback? Or I guess it was, right, Brenda Tracy saying that she was going to testify. Anything since that yesterday?
Well, I mean, today has just been, again, the word continuing to trickle out that Michigan State has removed his images from the building. They've already made these moves to name an interim coach, to bring back Mark D'Antonio in an advisory role. It's already causing a cratering effect to Michigan State recruiting. And so, yeah, there's just the continual residuals from all of that.
So this was a Title IX or is a Title IX case. Did Michigan State's administration handle this correctly? Because there's thoughts that, one, they're not supposed to be a part of it. They're not supposed to know anything until it is released. But are there thoughts that they knew about this much earlier and they should have reacted to it sooner?
Yeah, I mean, look, they knew about it earlier because they enacted a third-party law firm to do an investigation, and the report has been concluded, and they scheduled this hearing. So there's no question that it's been known about by pertinent leaders. Maybe they're saying that they didn't know the complete details of it. But if you don't know the complete details of it and you're worried about it, you schedule that hearing for a lot sooner than October 5th or 6th.
So, John, does this kind of boil down to, like, even if, and I said this on a podcast earlier, that even if he's telling this 100% truth in this story, which seems unlikely, but it's still, he's put himself in this awful position for Michigan State.
Yeah, it's again, and I believe he was on a actual Michigan State trip at the time that the alleged incident took place over the phone. And so he was technically on university business. And again, you're dealing with somebody. I actually used to co-host a syndicated radio show in Tennessee with Chris Lowe of ESPN. We had Brenda Tracy on our program several years ago as she made her way around the country speaking about sexual violence and trying to help educate football programs across the country. So this is not just a bizarre incident on its own that would be bad enough, but then you're talking about the singularly most recognizable and visible crusader against sexual violence in all of college athletics, and you've made these decisions. And it's a completely untenable situation for Mel Tucker and for Michigan State, and it's another completely avoidable embarrassment, flat-out embarrassment for the school.
Any indication, John, of whether or not he's going to try and say, okay, let's throw it all out there in the open? I mean, I guess his position is maintaining that, it was consensual or what have you. She's obviously said otherwise, but any sense for, whether or not Mel Tucker will just try to fade into the night, or is this something that you think he'll try to fight in some manner?
No, it's been indicated to us at Football Scoop that he definitely intends to try and fight this. But again, I don't know the practicality of him testifying in any sort of public nature. I don't know even if that would be open to the media or the general public to attend that type of Title IX hearing. But yeah, he will try to fight this on some sort of level, but it's just hard to see a path forward for him.
Mel Tucker, of course, now is he's all but gone. He's gone. But my question is, when you look at what he's done and what they signed him to, how much, let's say, no matter what, this is a bad deal. Is this also Michigan State, one, embarrassed, and they should fire him? And how much of it is they want to get rid of the contract that they probably overextended themselves on 2 years ago?
Yeah, that's the question we'd probably have to have some truth serum to get an actual straight answer on. But that's the question that I promise you we've already heard from numerous coaches around the country is, wow, this is absurd. You can't do that. And this is also completely letting Michigan State off the hook for one of the most reckless and irresponsible contracts that we've seen. I mean, look, when Texas A&M has given crazy money to Jimbo Fisher, well, Jimbo Fisher has been a proven program builder with a national championship. You gave it to Mel Tucker after one decent year, really, and just completely inexplicable. And whoever made the decision to give the contract and give those terms to it, I'm a terrible poker player. I would like to play poker with that person.
Yeah. John, you mentioned the recruiting bottoming out for Michigan State. It's too early to know who their next head coach would be. Do they stay in the Michigan State ladder, or do they go outside and try a massive reboot? Because they've shown themselves willing to pay big money for a head coach. Do they use that money to go after someone who is proven?
Well, I mean, look, Pat Narduzzi is beloved there. He has a strong history there, and he's done a really, really solid job at Pittsburgh, a place that doesn't have a ton of resources, that has a lot working against it in a state much like Michigan, where Michigan State is number 2 to Michigan and Pittsburgh is number 2 to Penn State. So he's a guy whose name we will hear, have heard, will continue to hear until the situation is resolved. If Michigan State wants to try to go a more offensive-minded route, then you look at a guy like Tyson Helton, maybe at Western Kentucky, who's done some great things, who's had a very exciting offense, who's won games without the most talent, and who's also been at some big-time places and can recruit all over the country. It really just depends on what they see as needing to prioritize and value in this next move.
John, I know it's hard to say or speak for an entire fan base because there's just so many, variables, but what's kind of the general feedback or, I guess, reaction that you've seen from the Michigan State faithful about this whole ordeal? Obviously, there's embarrassment, of course, but just kind of what is the general vibe as far as how this is sort of unfolding so quickly in front of their faces?
Yeah, I live in South Bend, Indiana, guys. I've got a really close friend here whose brother is a Michigan State graduate, and the word you just said is the prevailing sentiment. Embarrassment. It's just complete embarrassment. I would consider the other terms to be disbelief, and then also asking how could you be so reckless, particularly at any institution at any level right now with where things are, but particularly at a place like Michigan State that's already had that sort of just heinous, embarrassing situation with Larry Nassar and paid it continues to pay for lawsuits that stem from that. So that's the overarching sentiment is just disbelief, recklessness, and embarrassment.
Will other administrators or upper level have their jobs in jeopardy because of how this was handled?
Well, I think you have to look very closely at that possibility. And again, we're at the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. This is a story that's been unfolding really since after midnight Saturday night. So we're still almost in the discovery phase. We don't know yet what we don't know. We're going to find out much more information, presumably no later than that first full week of October. But it's hard to think this is just siloed to Mel Tucker. There has to be repercussions for additional people on the heels of this.
I have one other question, and this is a legal question, so I'm not sure. They both have admitted to deleting text messages. Tucker saying, I believe that because he gets so many, and then Brenda Tracy, she deleted hers as well. Does that come into play whatsoever? And if it ever got to a deeper lawsuit between one or the other, can they find those text messages if they're on the server?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it in far more significant government cases where a deleted text message can still be a recovered text message. And again, those have been situations of national security, of international trade laws, things like that. Those are far more important than college athletics. But yes, if it goes that far and you can subpoena a company and get them to cooperate, be it a Verizon or a Sprint or whomever, AT&T, if you can subpoena that company and get them to search their servers, then yeah, it's hard to. My understanding is it's hard to truly delete a text message forever with today's technology.
Thank you very much. John Brice of Football Scoop. I happened to see his story. We've had Zach on before, Zach Barnett. Great stuff, John. Thank you so much for being a part of the show with the latest on that story involving Michigan State. Head coach Mel Tucker, he's out, all but out. And